Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and wherever you are, I hope all evening, maybe some of you it is morning, lakini karibuni sana. My name is Wanjiro Muredi. I am a wine consultant, an educator, and recently, after not using the terminology for a long time, I want to say sommelier as well, because I work in wine, and that is very broad in this space. It's very, very exciting for us to be hosting this webinar. Among the many hats I wear is I am the president of the recently registered and launched Sommeliers of Kenya Association, SOCA. And we're doing this under the umbrella of that organization, of course. But we have a very, very special guest who is one of my students. You know, I wear the title Mwalimu, and Mbugua Kibe has been a student of WSET, and I'll introduce him in a bit more detail. But he's our presenter for this evening, having completed a very amazing research. Of course, he's an soon-to-be alumni of Strathmore University School of Hospitality and Tourism. He has been on the sommelier scene for a bit, and he's going to do great things and make us all proud. But then just the fact that we have a research on wine, I think is a very exciting thing for us to have in the first place. So thank you all for joining. During COVID in 2020, of course, everything changed. And part of the people I was working for at the time, Wines of South Africa, encouraged us to do online courses and webinars on the same. In that very process, what happened is we used to run these courses, these virtual tastings, and then we would do a small quiz at the end where we would give prizes. So one name was always very consistent through this thread. That is Nixon Munga. We hadn't met yet, but I think out of the many sessions we ran, he always attended. And the great thing that I didn't know was, until of course he got to my Wines and Spirits Education Trust class, is that he was an architectural student who had just developed an interest in wine. And he came and he, very quickly did his WSET Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and even moved on to spirits, and has also moved on to do things in Italy. So this initiative, like we're doing today, should not be taken lightly at all, because there's spaces where people get to learn, and who knows, you could be the next big thing coming here. The Sommelier Association that has recently been formed is really to promote the sommelier work and the sommelier profession within the country, Kenya, and also in the region. The key thing is there's been very many things happening around organically, and of course through people's entrepreneurial pursuits. People go for wine shows abroad, people have wine fairs locally, there's been tasting from different producers and importers that come through. There's a lot of online resources and books, and there's a lot going on. But just like we know, Kenyans are good runners, right? Nobody has to say anything about that. But if we kept just running ourselves here in Kenya, nobody would know us out there. So clearly, the runners to benchmark themselves with others in the world have to look for those international opportunities, whether it is the Olympics, the World Championships, and then they go and run and actually show that they're really good, get some international recognition, like, the Olympic gold medal and stuff like that. So I refer to running a lot even in these things. So the same with the Sommelier Association. There was many things happening internally, and of course, people have been able to do international networks, people work abroad and the like. But if we have an association, that first creates a structure within which we can develop the profession. And then there's the additional value of being affiliated to an international association. And that happened to us in May. We joined the French acronym of ASI, is the Association of Sommeliers Internationally. So Kenya has been given membership as an applicant. So we have 2 years before we become a full member. So that then is like a runner having access to the Olympics and those other things like that. So we're really, really excited. The man of the day is Mbugua Kibe. Like I said, he is a sommelier. He's soon to be a Strathmore alumnus, and he'll be telling more about that. But I also met Mbugua in class, level 1 class sometime last year. And we never really get university students coming to do the wines and spirits education courses. Typically, we find someone who's been in the industry for a long time, and that kind of thing. So I was quite excited to have, the, let me call it, not really the nerds, but let me use that word very loosely today in class. And of course, he has gone on to do level 2, gotten distinction. So he's another Nixon in the making, if I can compare them together. And more so, he chose an interest of wine appreciation in Nairobi. So that's what we're going to be really presenting on today. So we will have that. We will have a chance to do some question and answers towards the end. So you're free to please put your questions in the chat, or after he does his presentation, then we can give people a chance to speak. Our chat master, James Mushiru, will be helping us and checking if there's any questions and the like. And yes, I need to make you the host now and unpin myself as well. I will do that. Sawa sawa. Without any further ado, over to you, Mbugua Kibe, to give us your amazing presentation. Asante sana.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. Let me minimize my slide. Okay, so this is a presentation that has been long in the making and something that I've done repetitively. And now is the time I was able to finally come forward and share it with a wider audience through the Soccer Association. And just to briefly explain what I wanted to go through, I wanted to give a brief introduction of myself before I go through most of the research. And then I talk about some of the insights that I got from it. So, like Wanjiro said, my name is Mbugua Kibe, and some of the fun facts about me is I am currently a student at Strathmore University, and I'll be graduating even this month actually, within the next 17 days. I have done a Bachelor of Science in Hospitality Management, and I've also done my Level 2 and Level 1 awards in wine through the WSET. I've also done sommelier and restaurant management apprenticeships with one of the hotels in Nairobi. I've done freelance wine tastings in different restaurants, and I'm currently doing freelance wine consultation. So when I'm talking about the project itself, what was this all about? The main point of this was as part of my undergraduate study with Strathmore. I was doing the hospitality management program. I had to do a compulsory research project that took the whole of 2024. And I decided to do something that I was passionate about through the WSETs. I became passionate about it because I already did one internship at the social house in Nairobi where I got very interested in wine. And I decided to do a research topic about it so that I could get some core insights before I could begin my career. So the main problem that I found while coming up with this research project was as much as the Kenyan wine industry and the wine culture has evolved over the years, there hasn't been documentation about it per se as to how it's gotten to this point, why it has gotten here, who are the key players, what have they been doing. And I found that that minimal study was what had pushed me to now look at it into further detail. And this came out, especially considering the fact that the association came quite later after the study was already completed because it started this year, and it kind of shows how little research there was on it. So the main objective that I had for the research project was to identify common practices that wine businesses and wine consumers had, what they were doing, what they had in common to promote wine culture. And I broke it down into three different subtopics. First was the product knowledge to see how much industry players actually know about what they're consuming. Then the management practices of how these businesses come up with policies and procedures to promote wine service or wine consumption. And then how much are consumers actually participating in these activities? How much are they understanding? How much are they reacting to it? And how much are they taking home if they're able to understand what is going on? So how I did the methodology was I came up with three different groups. I was looking at waiters and servers and sommeliers to look at the product knowledge aspect where I gave them a Google survey. I also had an observation group that I came up with, and we attended the wine fair of 2024, where I just let them mingle with the different wine representatives and to see how how much they enjoyed the experience, how much they were able to take away. And then lastly, I wanted to interview managers who would be able to explain a bit more about the management aspect of stuff. And at the end of the study, I had some very interesting results. One of the few things that I noticed with the wine knowledge aspect was we have few sommeliers in Kenya, but we have more sommeliers in quotes. And what I mean by that is even with, for example, the recent meeting we had with the Sommeliers Association from South Africa, where the president had explained the different certifications people have to get and the qualifications for them to be considered sommeliers. I noticed that a lot of the people that were serving wine don't have that qualification. And in Kenya, the best one that we have currently is the WSET that's offered by Wanjiro and other educators. But through the experiences of the different servers, if they have done marketing courses, like for example, the Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing and Sales, and combine that with the product knowledge through training and apprenticeships, then they can act now as sommeliers. And a lot of them were able to confidently say that they will be able to taste and assess the different wines, and then they'll use that through their sales. On the management side, the manager that I got in contact with explained that she does a lot when it comes to the training of the staff, where she would either do it herself or she would call different representatives, and how she also comes up with policies to manage profits and the different incentives and bonuses that she gives out. For the consumers at the wine fair, the focus group had a very positive feedback and a positive experience from the whole thing. And they had said that they really appreciated the entire experience where they were able to fully embrace the wine culture because some of the people that were there weren't really that into wine before. And since they had that one-on-one engagement with the sales reps, they were able to understand a bit more. And this is a factual graph that I had made that was part of the research project itself that shows their increased interest, the understanding, how much they engaged with the sellers, and how they were able to taste and identify specific notes. And then each bar represented one person. So in conclusion, I'd say that I was able to come up with great results that supported my theoretical framework that wine appreciation can only happen if managers, the sellers, and the consumers all work together. But at the same time, there were limitations to how I was able to conduct the research projects, particularly in funds and the geographical location. So that really hindered the kind of experience that people have. And a good example is if we were to take a lodge, for example, in the Masai Mara, they might look for South African wine, something related to the safari that will match with the setting and the aesthetic, as opposed to the city hotels that we have in Nairobi. Then the sample size was also a bit small because I was only looking at the top hotels in Nairobi at the time on TripAdvisor. So that was in August 2024. And it's not an accurate representation of all the hotels, the restaurants, the bars in Kenya. Plus, the four people that I had in the focus group is less than 1% of the total adult population in Kenya who consume alcoholic beverages and wine. So their preferences might not fully reflect on the whole of Kenya. But now that's where I come with the insights on the whole thing. And before that, this was the references that I had used to come up with my research project. It was just a bunch of courses, online courses from the University of California and WSET, plus research papers from different years across the world where they were looking at different aspects. And when I'm coming to the insight in itself, this is where a lot of things really came to light for me because when I was doing this research project, I wasn't actively practicing wine sales. I had just completed my internship as a waiter, and a lot of the stuff that I was doing was quite theoretical. But now, when I was able to go back and do my second internship back at the social house, was when I was able to fully practice some of the things that I learned through my research project. And through that, I was able to engage with the servers at the social house and develop a kind of training system that helped them understand what was going on. And I also had very positive guest experiences. And I remember a particular a particular incident was when I was talking to a guest, and it was a regular guest. She explained that whenever she came over, she didn't have a really positive experience per se because she wasn't getting something that she truly enjoyed. So I stood there, we had a conversation. I got to understand her preferences a bit more, and I chose a wine that she loved so much that her group wound up taking 7 bottles of it in one sitting, which was a great day for me. And it was very funny for me because my immediate supervisor had to rush out and buy more bottles because now she finished our stock and we had to restock in the middle of service. And I found that was very amusing. I would also say that I really did help with improving the sales of the hotel during the time because I remember during the first 8 weeks, I was keeping close record of all the bottles I would sell either by myself or through the team if they needed my help. And it wound up being a total of 60, if not, and that means it was even more, considering that the whole 7 bottle fiasco happened in March. And lastly, the whole thing also helped me with networking because now I was able to come up with the platform like this one where I was able to share my work. I was able to network with different people from across the world, and I was able to help with the wine sales. And with that, I would say I'm basically done with the presentation. So I can now go back to 1.0. We look at the icebreakers or if there are any questions or comments in the chat as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Kibe. And maybe you can stop sharing for now so that we can spotlight you again. Karibu sana. Makofi kwa Mbugua Kibe, right? I'm curious and thank you for providing insights at the end. I didn't realize the presentation would move on so fast. Perhaps give us, I'm just curious to know, why did you choose the tourism course first? And secondly, how did you hear about Wines and Spirits Education Trust and again want to continue with that just as a sort of top up? And then, like I said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to you shortly as well. Maybe just give us a bit more background is how you even got to where you are right now.
I would say how I got into the course to begin with was I realized that I've always had this deep passion for hospitality and tourism. And recently my mom told me something that made me laugh very hard. When I was younger, whenever we'd have guests at home, I would try and welcome them. And if I felt like they were not welcome, I would shift them out and then welcome them back into the house. And then that's when I realized how much passion I've had because it's been going on for a long time. I've been interested in cooking, coming up with different cuisines. And at some point in high school, I thought that was something I was going to get into. And then I realized production isn't really my strongest suit, especially if it's done commercially, because I realized I'm a very people person. I'm very extroverted. So I'd be better off in the front of house aspects. So that is how I decided to take the hospitality management course with Strathmore. And then how I got into wine specifically was through my first internship with the social house, where it was one Thursday, we were just gathered all in by the head sommelier. Her name is Janet. And it was at this time where she explained that she usually does beverage trainings for all the hotel staff. And now she was just talking about wine in general, how it is grown, how wine is made, the byproducts. And something that she said that was interesting to me was when we were talking about Sauvignon Blanc and how it has herbaceous aromas like freshly cut grass and capsicum. And in my mind, I was thinking, this is wine. This is made from grapes. Why does it smell like something that I would use to make stew? And I got very interested in that. And that curiosity was what sparked my interest in wine. So I'd continue having discussions with her, like privately on the side, where I got to learn more about her story, how she got into wine. And that's how I knew about the WSET. And she referred me now to the Hospitality Competency Center. So immediately after the internship, I did my level 1, where now I met you, 1.0. And after that, I went straight into level 2, while doing my research project. And then after that, now I went to do my second internship now as a sommelier and restaurant manager intern, that is.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for that. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit here, but let me also ask, what does the future look like? Because the reason why I was trying to highlight, you already have a degree in hospitality, and people would assume that's already enough. Now you're going
Mm.
on to spend more money on a 1 day course and a 2 day course that costs a whole lot to improve your skills. And I know you're going to do level 3, aren't you? Or are you already registered?
Yes,
Right?
definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe give us a projection of the future. Then the guest can also prepare questions. I'll be coming to you in a minute. Back to you, Mbugua.
Okay, I would like to answer that question in two different aspects because there is my future and then there is the future in general for wine in Kenya. Um, I'll start with the general one for wine appreciation in Kenya and the wine culture. I would say that the future looks very bright because through my study, I found so many different articles and blog posts and videos of how different activities have been coming up, how wine culture has really improved. And even through my internship, where I was able to see like trends that have been going on. And a good example was I learned how the Kenyan market can be very dynamic, especially like in last year during Christmas. Sweet wine sales were on the rise because of all the different office parties. And then when we are approaching Valentine's season, we are moving now a bit onto the red wine, mostly because of the color red and how red is associated with the color of love. And I would say it's a very interesting thing to see how the market is constantly changing and shifting and adapting to match different tastes and different seasons and celebrations. And I would say how my future looks like now as manage how do I say, as a wine consultant, is I'd love to help different businesses across the country, be it a hotel or a chain of hotels, restaurants, just anything where it is related in wine, where I'll be able to help the businesses improve on their sales and maybe mingle a bit more with our guests so that we can get a rapport going and we'll be able to build up the culture, especially now for the younger generation. Because something else I noticed when I was attending all these classes, all these wine tastings, is I would always be consistently the youngest in the room with like the least work experience because I was still a student at the time. And it was also some of the people that I met with said it was very encouraging to see young faces because now they'll be able to they say that they'll be able to see like there's a future with wine consumption, that the wine culture won't die down if the younger generation will be able to come forward.
You debunked Mr. Nixon Munga, who had been holding that youngest man position for a long time. But then thank you very much for those thoughts. Thank you very much. Before we get into the icebreakers, chat master, what is the
Mhm.
chat looking like? Philip Okumbo says, yeah, he's very impressed with Mbugwa's presentation and proud of this, having been a part of the research project. Oh, thank you very much, Philip. I'm assuming then you're from Strathmore University. If you are, would you like to say
Yes,
something?
he was my supervisor.
Philip, please.
What I can say is that I was very impressed. Actually, I was surprised the choice of the topic, but after we discussed the initial steps and he convinced me, I felt it was a nice topic to study on, considering it very new, and it brought out some very nice, interesting things about wine knowledge and appreciation in Nairobi, especially with the consumers and also the different establishments that sell wine. So all along I encouraged him along together, and every step of the way he was coming back for consultations, especially when he told me he was going to use uh, focus groups. That's the first time I've had a student do a research project with focus groups, and it worked quite well. So I'm very happy that he's making this presentation to a wider audience, and I hope they can appreciate the kind of knowledge that we can get out of this kind of research projects. So encouraging him to move to the next level, the WSET 3, so that he can make an impression. Thank you for the opportunity to make the comments, and I urge him to just stay focused.
Thank you very much, Philip Okumbo from Strathmore. We really appreciate you attending and, of course, the encouragement you've provided. I know many of you can attest to this. Sometimes we face resistance because of the work we do. Myself, even after being in the business for 10 years and it being my main economic activity, I still get people who say, oh, that wine thing of yours, that hobby, is it still going on? And yet it is my bread and butter. as well. So people sometimes don't take us seriously, and perhaps our friends who work in other alcohol-related industries like East African breweries, or the ones with the bigger budgets, are respected more for that. There's also, Peinda, thanks you for her presentation. Thank you so much for attending. Nixon as well says thank you for the presentation. Lorna as well says thank you for the presentation, and John Nyaga as well. Is there any particular questions from the floor regarding the research? I'll give you an opportunity now. Just raise your hand or indicate in the chat, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak. Okay, so Nixon, would you like to perhaps ask the question on the mic?
Hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Karibu sana.
Okay, so I have, well, two questions, and it's one that came up, I think, in the last major testing that we had in the California testing. One of them is, how do you think wine consumption and appreciation can be improved in Kenya? And that is beyond the main consumption regions. So you talk about Nairobi, the camps, coast, and the hotels. I believe those account for the main consumption regions. So beyond that, because there are some places where I've done events, and the concept of wine is so new and so foreign. So how do you think we can tap into those markets? And just as a follow-up to that, I believe, well, I think you and I are both young people. It's not so often that young people get into wine. I can say myself, when I started out in wine, spending more than 1,500 shillings was a crazy option, yeah? So most people would be opting for different beverage. But just generally, the world over has seen a reduction of wine consumption, and there's a worry that jobs in wine will disappear if Gen Z or younger people are not consuming. So how, say, would you package wine appreciation to a younger audience?
Thank you so much, Nixon Munga. Maybe you can also give a background about who you are, or for the next people asking questions. Maybe say a short intro, this is me, and then ask your question. Mbugua, you don't have to answer all the questions by yourself. Then this is your day. We'll give you the first dibs, and then we can also get comments on the questions from the audience.
While Nixon was talking, I was trying to write down his question and trying to conceptualize an answer. And that's why I was nodding along when you said that if we could also move on to the next person, because I wasn't fully done with the second question, but I can at least answer the first one about how I think wine consumption can be improved now beyond these major regions. Because now we're not looking at just the hospitality hotspots, which are the bars, the hotels, and the camps, but we're looking at the wider audience in general. I think one of the major things that he mentioned was talking about places where wine looked like such a new concept. And I think now that would be more of a marketing issue and just getting the information out there. And I would also say that, at least now for the younger generation, where we are very hyped up on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, I noticed that the algorithm is very focused on the kind of content that you consume, and then whatever you like most is pushed forward. And now I realized how all these different wine tastings, wine activities, they were happening all over the country, all over throughout the year, and I never knew about it until I started doing more research in wine. Now it's just everywhere on my feed. So I think it's just a matter of just trying to put it out there through different popular programs. I've noticed we have the Wine Wednesday, that's on Capital FM. If someone could get on NTV in one of their lifestyle programs, or even the trends, because that's very popular with the younger generation, then that would really push the market forward. And then the concepts about that fear about that reduced popularity in wine, especially with the younger generation, and how we can package it now to the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha when they now come of age, is I think it's just a matter of again, the marketing and trying to understand their perception, because Nixon had said something that is very important regarding that the current Gen Z might not have the same disposable income and spending power as the millennials and the Gen X. So it might just be not like a lack of interest, it's just like a lack of funding. So if we can kind of create events where the Gen Z could feel like they have that value for money, then we could also improve wine culture in the younger generation, which is why I think it's a great idea that we have the wine fair, because that's great value for money. Because you can just get like a ticket, like one single ticket at 2K, and then you'll be able to taste like 100 different wines. So I think that is a great opportunity for you to develop on your wine culture, because it's like you're tasting wine at 200 bob. So I think it's also a great initiative.
Thank you very much, Mbugua. So the first question, of course, was how do we improve wine consumption beyond the main hotspots, Nairobi, the big cities? The second one was how do we encourage more Gen Z? I'm going to throw this question also to Helen Washera. I see you. She's an importer in Kenya. Perhaps you have some ideas to share with us, Helen?
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Helen Washera from Casks and Barrels, an importer, as Wanjiru has said. So moving wine out of Nairobi, I think we'd have to really push it to that side. I think the market is ready, but Nairobi is where? Out of Nairobi is where? Is it Nanyuki? Is it Nyeri?
Yeah, Kirinyaga.
Yeah, but I think the counties are ready for wine, some of them. But of course, the sweet wine from my research. So I think we'd push it through below the line marketing, like let people taste and know about wine. Do shows also, it could be helpful. But I think we need to do more research. Which market is ready? I think the cities with more money could be more ready because they have more disposable income. And then to the second question, that's a tricky one. I don't know why they're not drinking. I don't know if it's because of being recorded and they don't want to get embarrassed. I'm not very sure why they're not into drinking. But I think probably packaging would play a role. And also the story behind what you're selling. That could sell to the Gen Zs. Because they're very focused, they know what they want. So it's up to us to influence them to drink. Yeah, that's my comment. Back to you, Wanjiru.
Thank you very much, Helen. And thank you for allowing me to put you on the spot. Maybe my comment on this before I also give other people members of the floor. Please volunteer yourself if you want to speak, then I can, at least give you some time on the floor as well. In 2018, that was before COVID, there's a hotel in Nyeri called White Rhino, in Nyeri town. Apparently, when I was young, we used to live across from the hotel, so it was like a homecoming back then. But this lady had come for one of the big events in Nairobi. She wanted us to do something there. So, of course, we did training with the hotel, and then we did a wine tasting with some of I think we had about 5 importers who agreed to come on that trip. So if in 2018, there was people already asking for that, I think really like it has been said, the counties are ripe, but then we have to be happy to go there. One of the funny things from that event is one of the older gentlemen actually wanted to leave the event early because he says he has to go milk his cows, which I found very funny. So he was like, next time, consider some of us who have to go milk the cows. Anyway, but then, initiatives like that. And then recently, I was also thinking about one of the legends of the wine industry, James Wahome, who started Africa Lodges and Cellar Grill. Africa Lodges is based in Voi town, and I think it has been in operation for about 5 years or so, maybe longer. And they also have a branch called Cellar Grill. Because he's a wine lover, right from the very beginning, he decided he wants to have good wine. He used to work for Kenya wine agencies. So he decided that his hotel in Voi was going to be a wine destination. And even today, like I'm sure if you go to Voi and you want good wine, Africa Lodges is a good place to start. I've only been to Voi recently myself. I don't consider it a hotspot town. I mean, it's on the way to the coast, and I know there's some lodges there. But again, it's entrepreneurs like us who will go and say, I'm a shoe salesman. Are people wearing shoes here or not? I can look at the opportunity both ways. If nobody's wearing shoes, it's an opportunity because then I can sell shoes. But again, if they're already wearing shoes, it means that they already know about shoes, therefore I can sell more shoes. So it's about perspective and how you look at it in that way, at least for the other areas. But indeed, people are ready. If we take it to them, let's try and be creative about ways we do so. Language is also very important. I remember when I had to do a training in Mombasa, I had to teach wine in Kiswahili. Very, very difficult to do as well. But then those are some of the things then we can have in place. On the question of wine consumption, I want to take maybe among the Gen Z a very different view. Some of us in the wine community had parents who were in the wine industry. And I know I always find it so funny how people drink with their parents. Because even now, when I'm sitting with those more senior members of those families, I find myself somehow struggling to drink in their presence, right? Because of that's not how I grew up. But for the people who grew up with their people who grew up in wine families, it's no big deal because they've been drinking as a family for a long time. And they've developed that culture. It's nothing out of the ordinary. So clearly there's a cultural, let me say, bridge that we may have to navigate. But perhaps if we introduce younger people into responsible drinking earlier, that stigma or whatever it is, about drinking alcohol, can also be made. And then you find this a lot in the more mature wine countries where people say, it's very common for them to be with the people, who are drinking as well. But yes, like it has been mentioned, packaging formats, social media is a big deal. And perhaps, packaging formats, wine is available in cans now. I'm not sure they are cheaper than a glass of wine, but at least they're a bit more informal than a bottle that needs a corkscrew, for example, and things like that. And even the company that was recently launched in Kenya called, is it Wine in a Glass? They're serving wine in sort of like yogurt containers that you just sort of strip the top and you have the cup and it's reusable. Perhaps that makes wine more accessible. But indeed, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that area because the other thing is, people are a bit more sober curious. That's my 2 cents. Anyone else wants to add anything before I head off to the next question from John? So John asks, how do you make sure the awareness of wine in the Kenyan restaurants and hotel space puts practice? And I think perhaps, Mbugua, this is related to one of your objectives of the management policies and practices. Yeah, and you give the example of how the manager at the particular hotel that responded to your question was very keen on education. But then perhaps what else could be done in this area? So I'll give Mbugua first and then we'll take it to the floor.
Okay, to answer John's question, this is something that I have also covered, not necessarily in the research project in itself, but as a general unit in my degree, where we are looking at the principles of management, product development, coming up with a sequence of service, standards of operation, and stuff like that. So that now falls on the manager's side, where it now becomes their responsibility to kind of take in as much as they can from the market, where they're able to figure out what is it that people want, what are they looking for, and then come up with a policy, or at least a framework that they can use. Once they come up with that framework, now the next step is to let the staff know about it. How do we plan to appreciate wine, or what are we going to do about this? For example, now in the social house, what I went through was, leave alone the training that happens, we would figure out which wines do people love, which ones are moving quickly, and then we would move that to be the house wine, where now that is something that will be served by the glass. And then we now educate the staff now on what that wine would taste like, the flavor, the texture, the acidity, tannins, everything to do with the wine, so that they'll be able to answer those questions when and if a guest will be able to ask. And then you now get feedback from the customers, because that is the most important part of the whole thing. And that is why I had the focus group, to show how much customer feedback and customer engagement is important for the success of your business. So based off the feedback you get, you'll be able to amend your policies, to figure out what is working, which one is not, how can you cover up these issues that are coming in as a shortfall. And yeah, it's just a matter of a lot of introspection, a lot of inward looking, so that you can come up with the policies that you would do. And I think that's it from my end. Return the ball back to Wanjiro.
Thank you very much, Mbugua. I actually want to throw back the same question to John. John, if it's the John, I think it is a sommelier working in Dubai. John, perhaps if you could unmute and give us also your perspective about what has worked in your environment in Dubai.
First of all, Sudan Mbugua is doing a great, an amazing job. So well done, Mbugua. Yeah. Second thing, to introduce myself, I'm actually a senior sommelier in one of the restaurants. I have an experience of 5 years, to say, and I'll just go through what I think could be improved in terms of the wine culture in Kenya, which I think it's something that we need to work on, because I think when it comes to like wine fairs, we need to make sure that people who are attending this wine fairs, they get to understand more, not just to come to drink, but to make sure that they're coming to understand wine. Because I believe for someone to drink wine, you must understand it first, because that's very important. To drink wine, you must understand it. So the question is how, even if we were to, to make sure that there is awareness by training the staff, we also need to make sure there is awareness for the guests that are coming to those restaurants and hotels. Maybe we can do more events in regards to wine tasting, because that's something that I have seen like it's kind of short in Kenya. People will appreciate wine if you push them to go to drink, because as we know, our culture in Kenya, we are not wine people, so it's also hard to push. But through through the strategic way of pushing people, especially the young people. And it's not just, we don't focus only on young people, because if we focus only on young people, it might be hard also for them to buy wine, just like you're saying. But also, let's focus to the people who are a bit older also. So I think that's where the market is. People who are drinking, even in Dubai here, people who are drinking wine, it's not the young people. The people who are drinking wine are the mid-range people who are a bit older, not even older, like let's say millennium. From millennium to go up, they're drinking wine. But how do we make sure that we push the awareness to that part of they can be able to drink more? It's a question all of us have to answer. But I think if we do these wine fairs, it needs to be, first of all, affordable, and also we need to create an experience where, if they're coming to drink, to taste wine, we need also to give glasses, wine glasses, those kind of touches. We have to give to, maybe to find partners who will provide wine glasses, and so that they don't have to drink in maybe tumblers, because I've seen, sorry to say, I've seen later, not to like to discourage, but you have to create an experience where people, they're not just coming to feel like they're drinking, they're coming to taste wine. Because when you give people wine in tumblers, they will just come to drink and then they will go. You need to show them also the art of, we are drinking wine. We drink wine in the glass. This is how we swim. This is how we do all the things. And then that experience, that we want to do it more and more and more. I think that's part of what I would say for now.
Thank you very much, John. And yeah, may you continue holding the flag high in Dubai, and perhaps having exposure to wines only of us ever dream of. Asante sana. I also want to move to Canada, if I may. I hope, Lorna, you're still on the call. Lorna, Kipkoskei,
I'm
a
on the
member
call.
of team. Oh, thank you very much. What has been your experience living in Canada, and how can you compare that based on this question? What more can we do to elevate the experience? Thank you, Lona.
Oh, thank you, Anjero. I mean, actually, I just wanted to say thank you, Mbugua, for doing this. It's a new way of bringing wine into conversations in Kenya. So you appreciate effort from young people like you, and yeah, looking forward. My name is Lona. I love wine, love Kenya, still rapping. Moved to Canada like almost 2 years ago, and I'm still in the wine space. And yeah, so one thing I've noticed basically the consumers are still the same, like in terms of people still we're still struggling with the same question why young people are not consuming wine even here in North America. And we're just thinking basically, I was thinking when Alois I think was answering that question, it's just the accessibility in terms of price. Wine still remains very expensive, and if you think about young people 25 and under, they're still trying to get their finances in order. And a bottle of wine maybe might be Kenyan shillings. I think it's now 1500. I don't know, for like a good accessible wine that's maybe not sweet. So that's still a bit more expensive compared to competitors from Diageo, where they have like a whole Zinga for like less than 1,000. And also just the communication around it. Wine seems very snobbish, and it really doesn't appeal to young people. I don't know what they like nowadays, but the more we do this, the more we make it accessible in terms of price and also availability. Also, just talking about it and the events that, like wine fair that happens in Kenya, just brings people into the space. And I think that helps because we do a lot of events here. And when I'm always serving, because I like serving and talking to consumers directly, the sentiments are the same as Kenya. That's my surprise. As much as the purchase power here is higher, the sentiments are still the same. And I'm like, consumers are just still the same. So the question is for these Gen Zs, by the time they get into like over 25, will we have warned them so that the continuation can still go on if they get to a point where they have the money? So that's my comments really. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lona. Thanks so much. And for joining the call, of course, sharing your opinion and keeping flying the flag very high. I know also you have a wide exposure to grape varieties that we may not have here, and of course, experiences, but keep flying high. Thank you very much for that. Now let's get into a little icebreaker. I guess Mbugua and I will is it called, what is it called when you throw to the other person? So on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, we will encourage you to use the chat box for this. Most of these questions, okay, some are open-ended about, the answer could be anything, but there are some that are sort of which, or yeah, left or right, this or that, or whatever that is called. Mbugua, I'll ask to start. I'll take, mine is a or question. So please answer in chat. What is harder to manage, the grapes or the margins? What are difficult to manage? Okay, so John says grapes are more difficult. Mbugua says margins. Money or the box? Money or the box? Am I showing my age? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, great. All right. They're hard to manage. That says Amy. Nixon says grapes too. Stacy says margins. Okay, so grapes are leading here, and we'll have a few comments from the answers as well. Amy.
Good evening. Why grapes? For me, really, is just the perishability, meaning that then also managing the freshness, because the quality of the grape also feeds into the quality of the wine, I believe.
It's got it. So grapes because of the perishability. Awesome. Where are you joining us from, Amy? Thank you for your answer. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Nairobi. I am Kibe's lecturer.
Oh, lovely.
I taught him culinary, yes. And just here to say, good job, Kibe. You're doing really well.
Thank you. This is so heartwarming for the faculty to join us too. Asante sana. I'm going to go to Stacy. Stacy Onyango says margins. Why?
Yeah. Hi everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Stacey Onyango. I'm currently a final year student at BOMA, pursuing a diploma in hospitality management. And yeah, I do say it's the margins because I do feel like, especially here in Kenya, most of the wines that we do get are wines that we import. And like there's usually a lot to do with the import duties and the taxes. And then also like here in Kenya, wine is often considered as a luxury, just the way we were saying it. Like most people do not buy wine because it's, it's a bit pricey. So that to me makes the margin be like what's the major challenge. And also like just trying to balance the pricing because again, you realize that the margins are usually like if you put like high margins because already the wine is expensive, the guests are not going to want to buy the wine. So that becomes a major challenge as well. And also just competition from like people who are producing spirits and other types of alcohol.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stacey. So the money in the bank matters. You could have gotten all the best grapes and managed them well, but at the end of the day, you're not going to bank the grapes. What we need to bank is the money. So how much money can I make out of this? And I mean, I hate to admit this also, like I'm a person in the industry, but it's very difficult to buy wine on trade because of the pricing. It's usually very, very difficult. We do it, but then we do it painfully because we also know we have access to the off trade direct from the importer pricing as well. Thank you for that. Bogwa, over to you with your next question to the group. I am sorry about the polling, but perhaps we can get by with answers from the floor like we have. Over to
All right. An interesting icebreaker that I found because I've seen that we have our different mix of people in the chat. We have students, lecturers, wine importers, sommeliers who I'm considering like wine sellers because they're directly working with the guys. So now the question now would be, um, what would you say would be your go-to wine? It could be a particular wine brand that you really loved, or it could be based off something simple. If it's is it a color, a taste, is it dry or sweet wine? Is it champagnes or sparkling wines? Just whatever that you like. So what would be your go-to wines? That's red, white, sparkling. So I've posted it on the chat, and I'd love to also hear from Logan if he's available to chat, because I've noticed his response was in French. So I'm guessing he is joining us from a French-speaking country. So it would be interesting to hear the perspective of what the wine industry is like in France.
Yes, well, hello everyone. Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer earlier because I'm actually walking in the same time and just listening. It's very interesting what you're talking about, guys. Really, congratulations for all the thing you put on. So yeah, actually, I'm French. I'm French too. I'm working in my shop in the middle of Paris. I'm actually selling wines and spirits. So, and I'm looking forward to probably go on a war to Kenyan because I know there's a lot of things moving up there, and it's very interesting to see how people are really motivated about learning about wine, go for wine. And so, just to let you know, me, I'm also working with some very small purses. So and they're all looking to go actually for this kind of things. I've been working for big companies in some big industrial in wine and spirits, but I prefer and for any kind of like to answer to your question, I like any kind of wine, red, white, or sparkling, whatever. But I prefer the small purses with a big know-how and with some very good value with the price. I think that's everybody wants to spend a lot of money would get a lot of quality.
Okay, thank you so much for
You're
your
welcome.
feedback, Logan.
Thanks to you.
And I'm seeing that Manjiro has said she loves Cap Classic, Blanc to Blanc. And it also now poses the question of what are these different things? Because something I've also noticed with a lot of beginners in wine, any sparkling wine is champagne because that is the word that they know. So if you start putting Cava, Prosecco, Blanc de Blanc, Cap Classic, guys start getting a bit confused. So I thought that was also an interesting perspective on being very specific about the kind of stuff that you like. I've also seen Nixon likes aged Rioja Blanco, which is an interesting concept because now these are two different wines from two different regions. And Flocan has also said he loves any wine, and I'm guessing he would also love the French wines so they can be patriotic and stuff like that. Do you have any other comments to add, Wanjiro?
I was hoping to see a flurry of responses here. Thank you, Kibe. John Yaga likes Bordeaux, especially Saint Julien. I hope I'm pronouncing that right now that Locan is here. Yes. Okay, so we have a sparkling, we have a white, we have red. No rosés. Any rosé? Okay. Oh, and Mbugua is sweet red, right? Any reason why?
I realized it's not even sweet red per se, because I
Mhm.
prefer wines that are very fruit forward. Because I used to like
Okay.
only sweet wine because I would say like dry wine is, it's just very yucky and a bit unpalatable. And then now when I was doing the WSET Level 2, when I was exposed to a variety of grape varieties and how they all taste like differently and how some are more fruit forward. If it is in an oak barrel, it will have the notes of vanilla and honey and caramel if they're older. So that's how I learned that it's actually a bit deeper than just the sweet sugar flavor, but they could be the sweet fruity, sweet oaky flavors.
Got it. Got it. Oh, and then Apasi Indieka says red and in particular Pinot Noir. Apasi, where are you from?
I'm calling from Kitale actually, but I work for Celebrity Cruises and I'm on vacation right now. I work as an assistant waiter, but soon to be a sommelier.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
From Kitale to the world and drinking Pinot Noir. Got it. Lovely. Thank you very much for that. Philip Okumbo. Awesome. Thank you. Philip Okumbo says for him it's red wine. It doesn't matter whether it's dry or sweet. It depends on the occasion. So the occasion is Tuesday. Is today a dry or sweet day? Anyway, thank you for your feedback. I'm conscious of the time, and I promised you that we would end before 8:30. So I want to give this opportunity for the next few questions to people who haven't spoken before. But then again, if you feel you want to give feedback as well, I'll welcome you to do so. But I'm going to perhaps call upon someone who hasn't spoken. What was your first wine experience? Maybe it was memorable, maybe it was not. What was your first memorable wine experience? And I'm going to start with Victoria Muema.
I cannot remember my wine experience when I've been drinking wine for a very long time.
Okay.
But I do love wine. Does that count?
Okay, give us a memorable one. Give us a memorable experience. Since you're a veteran, give us a memorable experience. And we love it that you love wine. And thank you for joining in from China.
A memorable experience. Actually, I had a wine tasting last week with Mbugua. We had, there was this very interesting pairing that I really loved. It was a pinotage with pork ribs. That was amazing. I could actually feel the wine bursting in my mouth with flavor. So I would mark that as a memorable experience. Thank you.
Okay. And was this in Nairobi or China?
It was in Nairobi. This was just a few days ago, last week.
Okay. At the side, I assume at the Cellar Grill, right?
Yes, at the Cellar Grill. Yes. I actually loved that combo. I'd never put that together and it was very good. I enjoyed it. Quite memorable.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go. If you need to have that pinotage with the pork ribs, take Victoria with you when you're heading out to Cellar Grill.
Yes, please. And then if you don't mind, I have a question for Mbugua. Do Kenyans care about food pairing when they're having their wine? Do they care? Does my beef go with red wine, or am I having chicken with white wine? Or do we just drink for recreational purposes? Like, let me just enjoy a glass of wine. I'm very curious to know that.
From my experience and also from the staff day, I noticed that Kenyans might not particularly care on the nature of the pairing, But if it is something that you're doing for the first time, it might have a great impact on you. For example, because now we have to think about the science behind the food. What is it, sweet? Is it salty? Is it fatty? Is it savory? All that stuff, and how that would eventually affect the wine. Most of the people that ask for the wine and food pairing don't usually ask per se. It's like they'd go to the restaurant and say, I want this specific wine, regardless of what they're eating, because they love that wine. And it's something that I had actually covered in my research project in a bit more detail, where your preference towards a certain food or a certain wine will ultimately affect the choice that you have. And you might still enjoy it regardless of whether or not it doesn't like match up scientifically. But if you are like a younger consumer and you are just getting into wine, then you are more susceptible to the mispairing and the effects of it. So if you say you wanted to taste something sweet and then you take it with sweet food and then all of a sudden the wine has gone dry, then that we might end up having a negative experience. So what I would recommend every time, especially what I used to do at the social house, is I'd reach out to the guests. We have a discussion about it. I ask them, do they have any preferences before we even begin that conversation, so that I can keep that in mind when I am suggesting. And if they have none, then I would be able to move towards a pairing that I am sure they will like, as opposed to letting them choose. But if they still choose, I let them enjoy, and then I come back for feedback later. And if the experience was negative, we can now figure out what to do for the next time they try something new.
No, very comprehensive answer. I have nothing to add, but I just want to ask, what was the wine that you sold 7 bottles to? The 7-bottle story. What wine was that? If you remember it. And then
Yeah,
I
I do
will be
remember
coming. Okay, go ahead.
it. Sorry. How this conversation started was this lady and her friend were talking about how they love drinking wine. I had also met them once before on a totally different occasion, so they were very happy to see each other. And she started complaining that whenever she comes to this place, they would get recommendations of pricey wine that they didn't even like at the end of it, because as much as they like as much as they like white wine, it wasn't matching up to what they like their flavor. So I had to stand there. I'm like, okay, so what are the flavors that you're looking for? And they explained they were looking for something oaky and fruity that's very creamy and just smooth on the palate. So I'm like, okay, let me see what we have in store. And I came up with several bottles, because that's also a technique that I was using whenever I'm selling wine. I'd choose multiple bottles and then I bring them to the guests and explain a bit about the wine. So ultimately, the wine that they chose was the Napa Valley Chardonnay, the Oak Chardonnay. And they loved it because of how it was very fruit forward, but at the same time, it was still very creamy with notes of vanilla, and the acidity wasn't high. It was on the medium side, and that's why they loved it so much. So whenever they finish the first bottle, they get a refill. They finished the 3 bottles that we had in stock at the time, so now we had to get on a motorbike and rush to our importer. And then we come down with a whole box of it so that they wouldn't run out again. And ultimately, by the time I left my shift, they were going 7 bottles and they were still going. I handed over my table now to the night team. So as far as I know, they drank 7 bottles while I was there. I don't know if they had continued
When you
after
were there.
that.
Which is more, or took some home. So Napa Valley Chardonnay as well is something to try out. Awesome, amazing. Alois Onchuru, if you're on a call, I would just want you to say something before we close.
I'm happy to be in this call today, and of course, Mbugua has been one of my students. I know there's a faculty from Strathmore here, and I'm so happy that faculty can actually log in and listen into what the future generation is doing. Very interesting conversations. Great to hear from our good friends in Canada and Bordeaux. This is a take home for everyone. Just go back home and think of how's AI going to affect the wine industry. And I'm looking at AI from the angle of we're talking about analytics today. So are we talking about we're able to harness data, which we already have in our restaurants, or maybe import data, whatever it is that we import, consumption patterns and things like that? Are we able to use AI to, like look through that data and maybe just try to forecast what the trend is? Is it the young people drinking, or is it the millennials like in Dubai? Or, like, where are we going? Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's just for me, for everyone in this call to think, wherever they are, how they can plug in AI and use data to forecast the future. Yeah, that's it for me, Wanjiru. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. You see, I knew you'd drop us a bomb, and perhaps even a suggested topic for a next webinar like this one, with you as a guest speaker. Thank you so much, Alois. Thank you so much. Alois is a fellow educator of the Wines and Spirits Education Trust, and is also faculty at Boma International Hospitality College, and of course, a good friend of ours as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There is so much to say. I feel like we're just beginning the conversation now, but I will respect your time because we had set this for 1.5 hours, and I'm sure you have obligations elsewhere. But clearly for me, I wish I could sit on and continue with this conversation. So perhaps let me plug in something we're doing. The reason why I was really excited to host this with Mbugua is because on the 25th of June, we are launching what I'm calling the business of food and wine. So we've heard about tastings, and it's very important, of course, for the products that we spend so much money on that brings us a lot of joy. But then I think we also need to spend some time on the business that we are in. So what are the business models we as importers, as educators, as restaurants are employing to be able to be profitable? The grapes are good, but then the margins are also important, like one of us said. So in essence, it's a one-day event. We'll be held in the 25th of June at Olive Garden Hotel, which is off Irving's Codec. It is 5,000 per person. What does that give you? There is a full day, sort of half-day session where we have different industry speakers. We're going to have someone do a presentation of data, the data that Alois was talking about. What is the state of wine in Kenya, right? The opportunities, we've talked about competition from other alcoholic beverages. There's the issue of responsible drinking age, and those kinds of statistics. We'll have someone present on that. We're also going to have a session where we listen to some legends, the people who have been in the wine industry longer than us. Two of these individuals, number one is Paul Temgorem, who was a founding managing director of Kenya Wine Agencies, which again has gone through a lot of transformation, but it was one of the companies that bought wine in Kenya. And we have another legend, Jero, who is a director in a wine company in South Africa, but he's a Kenyan man, loads of experience with wine. So those are sort of the wine families I was talking about, where the older generation started and now the younger generation is taking over their businesses. We'll have a sommelier presentation in the Kenyan context. What does it mean? From Mbugwa's research, you saw there's bar servers, there is sommeliers, so how do we ensure that we understand what this role really entails, and how can we add value to it and make it more credible? There'll be also a session of how can I start a profitable food and wine business. So we talk to some people who are in the business and see how we can learn from their insights and lessons. So quite a packed program in terms of the business side. And of course, you can't have a wine event without a tasting. So in the afternoon of the same day, we network over the beautiful drinks we love. So all that for you at only 5,000 per person. If you're not able to come, please send someone and spread the word. We can put in some information here for you. So let me know if you're interested in that. We wanted you to register so that we can have details. So as a follow-up, we'll be sharing Mbugwa's full presentation. Then you can have that for your own reading, both the slides he presented today as well as the full research report. He has made that available to some of us, so we can share that with you. And of course, you can engage him further. And if you have an opportunity, he mentioned that, yes, he's open and ready to work and will soon be given the power to read is it next week or the week after, right? But thank you so much, Mbugua. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that, you are eager even to do this presentation. And I mean, you go down as our first sort of panelist in this kind of thing. And of course, for the Sommelier Association of Kenya, our international guests, our local guests, asanteni sana for joining us this evening. And we will be in touch with more. The socials, of course, that wine boy is Mbugwa's. Mine is @winejiro. It was on the poster as well. And of course, the Kenya Sommeliers, the Sommeliers of Kenya Association, SOCA, as well. I'm so happy that you were able to join. This recording will also be made available to you as well. Asante sana. Hopefully, see you at the next one. Bye.